So you can have the best strategy on paper and then things come and then maybe we'll destroy that. But you do have to have one. In marketing, you need to know what do the streets want. And it's only when you know what the streets want, they're able to give it to them. The problem that we have now is that people don't even bother to do a lot of research into what they're doing. And when it comes to advertising, everything is around us. In advertising, for example, we realize that Nigerians we can be very fickle. You do have to understand why you're doing X, And I think that for me, the why is also so essential. Why are we doing this? Who are we doing it for? Once you answer those questions, how best can we get to these people? And that's basically unpacking the strategy to have a fantastic campaign or advertising or selling.
Hello everyone, welcome to Stories and Journeys, where we explore the transformative power of learning, growth, and resilience. Join us as we uncover untold narratives and ignite curiosity. My name is Oladayo Oyetayo, and joining us here today is an OG in the space, someone with so much depth, someone with so much focus, resilience, driven so much impact across various brands, verticals, strong agency experience, strong brand management experience, with clear focus on helping every brand, every business it touch, ensure that they're able to drive better bottom line, grow revenue, and get value for their dollar. He's not a person than someone I think you know. He currently sits as the senior brand manager at Airtel Nigeria, in person of Oladayo Oyetayo.
That kind of introduction, I don't even know where to start from. Thank you
So much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for having me as well.
It's an honor to have you here. Just like I told the audience before we started, you have so much depth, so much experience in the marketing communication space. You touched on so many brands, and if you think about it now, it's been almost 2 decades right now, that you've, started working and started your career helping various brands. If you dial back, looking at yourself, a young boy, some 20 years ago, starting life, try to connect that to where you are now today. How has that journey been like for you as a person?
I think it's been I think the world will be interesting. I'm also sure that a lot of people start off, first of all, there are no schools in Nigeria, for example, for advertising.
Yeah, true.
In reality.
True.
So you probably have mass comm as maybe but when you get into the advertising space, and I started my career in a full-fledged advertising agency, you find that there are just all sort of people in there. There are guys who did courses, maybe from Yaba Tech, graphic design. You find people who did English, so sometimes the creative director and people that had or linguistics or funny backgrounds. Nobody till now, there's really no school for advertising as it is. So at least in Nigeria anyway. So you find out that it's a diverse set of people with different backgrounds, different perspectives, which is sometimes the reason why advertising agencies thrive as creative hubs, because different mindsets and core. A lot of crazy guys as well, oftentimes. So for me, it's been interesting because I found myself there just purely by chance. And growing up, I didn't really I wasn't set in any particular. I didn't have any course in mind to do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make money. So I think for me, I know I'm making money advertising anyway, but I think advertising you do it for passion first and foremost, before the money sets in or kicks in. It's been interesting for me finding myself here eventually, and I think that the experiences I've had over the years have also shaped my outlook, my perspective on life, even from an advertising standpoint. So I think that it's just been really, really nice going through different sectors, industries. I've worked in different, in the advertising sector, to be honest, but then on different brands, probably maybe, I don't know now, maybe 20, 30 different odd companies. So whether you're talking about maybe FMCGs or, the financial sector or the telco sector. Work for biscuit brands, work for tech brands, also. So it kind of like shapes, your outlook and perspectives on different things. And at the same time, you just have to also be able to clearly have different perspectives towards this thing, because what is good for A is not the same as B. While some brands might be really straitjacketed in terms of how they approach consumers, some are a little bit more flexible. Some are downright, totally, maybe culturally relevant. Some are not, so I think it's just been very interesting navigating the very complex advertising space over the last couple of years.
Beautiful. I think that's quite profound, because looking at what you do, you touch on so many brands. So you're able to soak as much as possible from various industries. You need to be abreast with so much regulations across those industries or verticals, and you said that you find your journey interesting, and I want to dial back a little, right? Growing up,
Yes.
Were you intentional? I know you said you were interested. You're more interested in making money.
Yes.
But growing up, if you think back now and try to connect the dots to where you are today, are there certain levers you pulled? Maybe values in terms of ethics, professionalism, just to ensure that you're able to stand out, and have that staying power, because it's 20 years, have that staying power and still be able to deliver, at the very top of your industry.
Well, to be honest, and I'm not so sure a lot of people know this, I found myself, purely in advertising purely by chance. 100%. Started off having a gap year with the university. The school didn't send our results for NYSC, so I was caught up at home. I was living alone. My parents were abroad. My brother and I were staying together, and we were just lounging as it were, totally enjoying life. Two guys who had just finished school. We had cars. We didn't have money. We had cars, and then we got tired. And then, just spoke to my uncle, who asked me to go see his friend at that time, and kind of like did an internship, like a pre-NYSC as it is. And then, so found myself in advertising, and eventually served there. And, the interesting thing is I finished service in March, but by January, before March, I already had my employment letter. And I think that, back to what you're saying, it was basically, it was funny because I never went back to my uncle. Until I told him, oh, they've given me a letter. I never went back to say, please help me speak to the owner, who was his best friend at that time, funny enough. I didn't even know that at the time I entered the company. But the work that I did, spoke for me. The work that I did ensured that they requested that I, come serve with them. And I did 2 years, and they, employed me even 3 months before I finished serving. So I guess I was an asset to them then. And so dialing back to what you had mentioned, while I think that, but the things that stood me out, I think, was the hard work, the professionalism that I put in, because even while serving, even while pre-NYC at that time, I would get to work. We resumed at 8 o'clock initially. I was at work maybe after 7 every morning, closed late. One of the few people in the company that had his own personal computer, his own laptop. I used to bring my own laptop to the office. Okay. And those were days where we still had the whole desktops. Very few people had their own personal laptops and all of that. But I put in so much work, and you wouldn't even know. I would dress well to work, never shabby. I would hang out the previous nights, sometimes be in town till late, but 7:30 I was in the office.
Interesting.
And I would close, so people, saw that as a young guy who was in his mid-20s at that time, and seeing someone put in all that, because typically what you find now is oftentimes the reverse is the case.
True.
You find young people who are just leaving school or in school, but when they get to corporate environments and co, it's why am I here? I'm just here to pass time. I'm doing internship. They're not interested in what they're doing. They come to the offices, their phones and their laptops are their best friends. They're on social media all day. They're not integrated. It's I just came here to spend some time. Also, I can fill in a logbook or what have you. So for me, it was having those things at the back of my mind that, look, this is not what I wanted to do then, but at the same time, I'm working here. I need to bring everything, that I have in terms of professionalism and everything else to bear, and what was key for me, and I think back to kind of levers that you're talking about, is also the integrity part of it, because, having been brought up in a way that, even though I love life and all that it brings, it was also important that you do your work with a lot of integrity, you do a lot of professionalism and hard work. I think those elements, they're missing a lot nowadays, but those are essential elements that with those three things, have the time: integrity, professionalism, hard work, you would go places. People will come to you. People would, recommend you for stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful. So if you're out there, not too clear on what your next path is, just like Aya said, hard work is critical. You need to also wear that art of having integrity and be professional in everything that you're doing. Like Aya said, 20 years is not child's play, and those are some of the levers that he has pulled to get him to where he is today. So I hope you're taking some notes. But I want to get deeper, with this conversation. 20 years within a marketing space in Africa, helping various brands, what role would you say that data, plays in ensuring that brands are able to not only run marketing initiatives, but ensure that they're able to connect with consumers, endear themselves, endear the brands in the mind of consumers, and make consumers become, loyal customers for life?
I think that it's unfortunate that in this part of town, in Africa and in Nigeria, to just bring it home, to start from there, the role of data and what it should play, I think that we play around it. I think we play around it. I think that you find that a lot of companies will launch products, without any research being done. You're the brand manager, the product owner, product manager. You assume that you know what the consumers require. So you create products, supposedly for the consumers, without taking into cognizance what is required. And, the argument you often hear sometimes is that research or mining data as it is can be expensive. That's relative, right? Because a lot of guys have, they belong to several WhatsApp groups, for example. Some people just have so many groups that they belong to. The family groups are there, the extended family groups are there, groups that were set up for actually for parties and all sort of groups, and all that. And creating a simple Google form, or anything like that, and sending in those groups, asking 10, 15 questions only, will bring you back so much data that you're surprised.
True.
The analysis is already even done for you to a bad extent. And something as simple as that, what's the sample size of, even when you're doing major researches, 500 people, 300 people?
True.
A really big one will be in thousands in reality. People probably do less than that to get, information. But on your WhatsApp groups that you belong to, you have people who are basically like, if you aggregate all the numbers of groups you belong to, you probably find over 500 people in some of them, in some cases.
Sure.
And of course, not everybody will fill the forms, but if you have a good rapport with them, they fill the forms out. So my point is that, it's so critical that we get the data in, that we do some level of research at every stage of product development. Before you go to market, before when you're in the market, even at the stages where you are doing you're conceptualizing the campaigns that you want to run, you need to test. Are people receptive to it? Does it make sense? And then when we have products or campaigns, we assume that we are communicating. We assume that because we know what it is, you know what the product does, you believe that you are communicating what it's exactly supposed to do. But in reality, you don't know how it's being received. You don't know what people are seeing when you sell the product to them and co. So at every stage, you need to constantly, get data, do some research, and take a product to the market. And even when it gets to the market, how is it being received? Month 3, month 2. So I think that, unfortunately, I see a lot of companies who don't even believe in it. I see a lot of companies, and it's a mindset thing. Like I mentioned, sometimes it's okay for you to commission huge research agencies to do some research for you. That's fine, if you can afford it. In some instances, the excuse would be, oh wow, it's so expensive. And clearly, honestly, genuinely, for some companies, for some products, it's actually quite expensive to conduct extensive, research, with professional research agencies. But like I mentioned, it doesn't have to be like that all the time. What you require is information, and what you do with information, how you process it depends on you. You can always even have, companies set up little research units, where they hire people who know what they're doing. And if you do have that kind of research unit in your company, there's no way, if it functions properly, that you not have better products and better insights. You will always have that. But we find out that it's so underrated, the impact of data and research, quality research can do for companies or for products in Nigeria especially.
Makes sense. I really love the idea around WhatsApp. I mean, it's just there in our phone, but I think most people don't really prioritize data enough to even want to go that route. But I think that's quite.
And the irony is, companies such as Meta and Google and Co are doing the direct opposite. They're mining us for data.
True.
They understand the impact of one subscriber to WhatsApp.
True.
So therefore, they are mining. They're listening. They want to know my habits. They want to know, what I prefer. When I'm gisting with you, what are we saying? How am I shopping and Co. They're doing the reverse. They're mining us, individually.
Correct.
But we are not taking advantage. So you find out that, which is part of the challenge that we have as well in the space, where technology and the advent of all the digital tools that we have available to us are not being utilized the right way optimally. As Nigerians especially, and maybe Africans, young Africans, we're using social media or digital media. I prefer to say digital media in reality, but perhaps we use just social out of the whole digital space. Because people think digital media is just social media, but it encompasses much more than that. But we're not using it as much as we can. People spend hours, on social media.
100%.
Gossip, gist, and Co. Whereas it's a gold mine.
It is.
You can be on X and all day, but if you're looking at the trends and Co, you can see where people's mindsets are, where it lies, what they prefer to do. Same thing and is information. In advertising, for example, realize that we can be very fickle, unfortunately. So things that are serious are the things that we are very, 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 we're prioritizing, we're getting tuned into. So from a marketing point of view, from an advertising point of view, it's not a minus for me. It only means that I know that to get you, I can be as fickle as possible, and then that way you're listening. You know that Nigerians, when it's too serious, we tend not to be bothered about it. We just take it at face value. So for an advertiser, it's still a gold mine. That's still information that you can mine. Like, this guy is just like easy peasy. So therefore, when I'm communicating, I'd rather probably communicate using a jingle than an infomercial, because nobody's going to listen to an infomercial saying the XYZ. But if it's a jingle, they like to dance, they like the music, and so therefore, if I drop a jingle with an amapiano beat, it might probably do well than me being just coming up and telling you about all the statistics behind my product. So all those things are information that is available to us, and it's also data. It's how you utilize it that matters the most.
100%. Something stood out from what you were speaking, right? And the way I think about it is, you need to have the mind of a strategist, or the mindset of a strategist, to excel in the marketing and communication space. No doubt. Because you said something around X, for example. If most people see the trend table, right, but they might not be able to piece it together like you just said, that you can basically tell within a few glance, where people's minds are gravitating towards, and mine that data.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you now, in line of the work you do, what role would you say the strategy, plays in ensuring that, and when I say strategy, I mean business strategy, marketing strategy, what role do you think strategy plays, in ensuring that businesses, thrive, and even as individuals, how can individuals have that mindset of a strategist, to even better their personal lives?
That's an interesting one. I think, and bringing back to what we were discussing before we started this, I think strategy is everything. It's everything, honestly. And if you unpack it, strategy, what does that really mean? It's all grammar at the end of the day. It is everything. When do you enter the market? How do you enter the market? I had a recent experience with an agency, and one of the challenges I have with the agency, for example, is not understanding who we are talking to. The first line.
If you miss that, you miss everything.
You miss everything. So you can have a fantastic campaign deck. You can have ideas are fantastic, but if it's not for who is there for, then it's for that purpose. It's just bunkum, the reality. So I think strategy is everything, and I also think that there are a lot of instances where people are not strategic, and so therefore, in planning campaigns, in going to the market, people are hopping on trends without knowing whether it's useful for them or otherwise. In advertising, you go to the market, there's the strategy you're taking to the market, it's not solid enough, it's not tested at all, and you just assume people go to the market copying what A is doing. So we're in the same market with X, and then this company is doing X, Y, Z. You do not even know the reason why they're doing it, and then you're copying the same thing that they are doing, not knowing, and you don't even know if the strategy that whatever strategy that they had in mind is even failing. You just go into the market, you can see what X is doing, you can see what our competition is doing, and you just jump and say, so what if they're all, really, really dumb and they don't even know anything, and then you just fall into the trap, this is what everybody can do the same thing, but doesn't mean that they're right.
It's true.
So I think strategy, honestly, is everything. How well you strategize is how far you would go. Of course, there are other instances, other things that can come in play, and then you use your strategy. You can have all the best plans, and something crazy happens, and then it all falls flat. Obviously, there are circumstances where we can't control. You can have a fantastic strategy, and then the Benno crisis happens, and then suddenly, it doesn't. It's not. The nation is in a state where it's not ready for dancing, as it were. So you can have the best strategy on paper, and then things come, and then maybe we'll destroy that. But you do have to have one. You do have to understand why you're doing X, And I think that for me, the why is also so essential. Why are we doing this? Who are we doing it for? Once you answer those questions, how best can we get to these people? And that's basically unpacking the strategy to have a fantastic campaign, or advertising, or selling, whatever it is that you're trying to do. It's thinking it through before you implement. Once you do that, the odds, the possibility of things actually now not going right is lowered. But unfortunately, also sometimes we're in states where, because we have deadlines, because we have timelines that we need to meet, we don't think things through. We end up going and all of that, and eventually, what happens when you go out to town with a product that is not well thought out? It will fail.
Don't get market fit.
Yes, it will fail. It will fail. The big guys are able to absorb it, and say, well, we'll kill the product or do something else. But the small guys just basically wither away. So the right strategy, not just having a strategy, the right strategy have to be in place for every single thing. How you want to win the market, how you want to go into the market. If it's not well thought out, if it is not decisive enough, if it's not well researched, if it's not well tested, it will fail.
Beautiful. I love that. And I want to bring it a bit on in what you said. And I want to see where your consultant's hat now. For a young business owner, watching us now, they have a product, that they think would sell. If tested, they think it will sell. What would be your recommendations to such a person to ensure that they move that business from zero, to to a business can generate revenue, and begin to grow from that stage?
I think that the first one is you have to have the right conviction.
Conviction.
Yes, that what I'm about to sell is going to fulfill a need.
Interested.
The businesses that have really gone on to revolutionize the world as we see it now are things that people just think and say, what is it that this product I'm bringing, what need does it fulfill? Is there a need for it? So we find out that, for example, people love to go on holiday, but they want to be on holiday, and they want to be on holiday in homes that are very homely. They want to, sometimes they want to cook, they just want to make breakfast by themselves, or they want to just chill. They want to have a setting that is more homely. They don't have a couch that is, that seems more like their home. But they don't want, they like the hotel feel as well, but it's so impersonal. So is there a need for that space and call, oh yes, or Airbnb? What if? Or people want to go from A to B, and they don't own cars, or they do own cars, but they want to go to work. They don't feel like driving. They don't like to drive. I've gone out. I'm intoxicated. I need to get home. But where I am, there are no cabs, regularly patrolling. There's no car park or whatever. What if I could just summon a cab? It will find me. It will take me home, drop me, and I don't have to haggle. The rates are already predetermined. I can have a look, enter Uber. But the times when these things were being developed and thought of, the founders telling one or two, like, oh, why would I want to rent somebody else's house? Why would I want to drive my car and drop somebody else, allow somebody to enter my car and I drop them off and collect money on my way to work? Why? It's my personal car, it's my personal home. Why do I want to rent out my home when I'm on holiday? Which was the whole idea of Airbnb. If you're on holiday, put your home to use, let other people come in, and you can make some money. But these founders had conviction that, yes, there's a need, first and foremost, they're trying to fulfill. And your own conviction, because you see, if there's no conviction, halfway along the line, when it's looking like it's not going to scale, halfway along the line when your people, not necessarily detractors, people who just have your back and just think this is not a very solid idea, without the conviction that you have that, no, I believe in this thing, it makes sense. Plus the need that you're trying to fulfill, because you have conviction, if you have conviction with all the stupid things in this world, and still you don't hear anything else about it. But it has to be, there's a need you're trying to fulfill. You have the conviction to see it through and believe that it will work, and then also, as much as possible, try to, that especially in this part of the world, we like sole ownership.
And collaborate.
Yes, we don't want to collaborate. We want to own businesses by ourselves 100% and co. But so if you share ownership, it's also shared risk. So is there a need you're trying to fulfill? Have you thought it through? You have an idea, and there's a need. There is a need you're trying to fulfill, and you've thought it through. You have conviction that it will work. Seek collaborators. Seek help. If you need to talk to experts in that field, speak to experts. If you need to look at businesses where it has failed, what's that? And that's research at the end of the day. So is there a need to fulfill? Yes. You have to have conviction that you can see it through no matter the odds, because there will be odds, there will be things stacked against you. Seek collaboration. Seek investment as well. Your savings might not necessarily, take it to the next level. So by seeking collaboration and investment of other people, you're sharing risk as well. You're also getting other people's ideas in, and then you have to be open as well. You have to be open. A lot of people are also close-minded, because sometimes, we think we have everything figured out. This is how, but sometimes just little things here and there. So seek advice. If possible, if it's a field that you can get mentors, seek mentorship. Understand why other players had failed. That's very, very critical. What did they do wrong? So you don't make the same mistakes while you're starting out. If you already know why the other ones didn't succeed, then you're halfway through to succeeding yourself. So it's important that you find a need to fulfill. The then you have the conviction that you can see it through. You seek help, you collaborate, seek investment. Progress.
Apt. Very, very profound. I love that. I love that because there are actual steps that anyone can follow,
Yes.
and they can actually measure, and track their progress. I super love that. But I want to dial back a little bit, right? And this came about when you were speaking about conviction, right? I know you said that you just dabbled your way into advertising, but when you think back now, at what point did you start believing, and started becoming, embodying, that area of expertise, and not like you've arrived, but like you felt like I can actually do this thing, like I can actually take it to the next level. At what point did you come about that realization? And what step did you take to then build yourself, invest in yourself to get in that skill? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. Looking at your profile, you would work with several agencies, right? And from my understanding of how that space works, you need to be able to sometimes hold your clients, provide strategic leadership, understand the space they are playing in even more than they are.
Yes.
And it takes so much of embodiment, to be able to pull that through and become someone that people will respect to even want to hear you speak. So on the basis of that context, at what point did you start becoming, and what steps did you take to become, that expert that people can listen to and want to follow your guidance?
Yeah. So I think that I love that as well. It makes me think back a little bit. Let me share a personal story.
Sure.
And I had traveled a couple of times in the past, and then I went to renew my visas, and I was denied. And it was at the same time I was finishing school, university. So my parents were abroad, my siblings were abroad, and I realized that I didn't have a choice. I had to face the work that I had found. There was no choice, to be honest. Well, probably choices, but not the ones that I did take. So, and then I think that for me was the number one thing that propelled me to really, sitting back and believing that this is all I have. I need to understand this. I need to master it and conquer it, and then, make progress doing this. And the funny thing is that beyond the fact that I found myself in advertising, purely by stroke of God's doing, as it were, I actually came to that realization that eventually, beyond the fact that I was also stuck, that I just totally loved the thrill of breaking campaigns. I'd never seen anything like that. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of worry. It's about to break. Will it happen? Will it not happen? You've done weeks and weeks of preparing for it, and then the night before the campaign breaks, for me, with all the madness and call, it's just euphoria.
Yeah.
I feel and when I started experiencing that, we've gone through the whole malady of everything, preparation and call. And then years ago was still, now it's easier. You want to break a campaign, you're sending, if you're the agency side, you're sending emails to broadcast stations and call. Way back, you had to send if you're making a campaign on Monday, you'd have to call DHL will come up in the evening and pick up mini discs as they were then, and you have to send the stations. Communication was poor. There were the phone lines were not as we have it now. The internet wasn't as we have it now, and it was just a madhouse. But hearing the campaign break on radio, or TV, there was a greater joy. I found myself drinking afterwards, and I'm like, yes, we've done it. And when I started experiencing the thrill and the euphoria of those moments, was when I knew I was home. It's something that till tomorrow, after all said and done, once a new campaign breaks, I'm just in love with it. And that, I think, for me, were the moments where I realized that this is what I wanted to do, and I started doing it. Now, to your second question about how do you get to a level where you're able to also have clients that must respect you, if you're on the agency side. And to do that, you must know what you're doing. The problem that we have now is that people don't even bother to do a lot of research into what they're doing. If you come to me as someone from my agency and you do not have knowledge about my product, you don't have knowledge about what I do or about my industry, and I'm like, what are you doing here? I probably have more knowledge about your own, industry than you even do of mine, and I'm the client. So I think that to get to that level, you need to master your art. You need to read, you need to educate yourself. And when it comes to advertising, everything is around us. There are times, especially earlier in my career, where I love the field work. I wasn't into research, but I know that if I go anywhere and ask people, so when I ask a question, what are you listening to? Even till now, I see ask what people are listening to. Now, when I'm being driven, when my driver puts a station, a radio station on a particular station, no matter how mundane it might seem, I leave it there. I listen. At night, if I'm driving home, there's a time I realized that, at night, so when we used to run, there's something called the All Media and Product Survey AMS. I think it's been renamed now. And it's not the most perfect software to use, but it was what, until now, the marketing comms sector relied on for some kind of guidance for different things when it comes to research for advertising and media. And we used to notice that there's spikes at night. So you realize that at night time there were always spikes for listenership on radio. I just wonder why, who's listening to radio 11, 12 midnight, 11:30 at night. And I was curious. So I started listening to radio, obviously coming out from hanging out and go middle of the night, and I put it on stations. And I realized that, from 10 o'clock, from 9 to like 12, it was the stations had call-in programs. And people were actually really calling in back to back. And these programs were mostly discussing relationships, life struggles and co. And people will call in back to back at those times. But the typical person will have slept. If you get what I mean. Regular people, regular folks, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. If there's something wrong with you, why are you up at 11:30? But people were on these programs calling back to back. Point is, if you're into advertising a particular product that required maybe a mushy set of people, romance-led kind of people. For example, if you own a dating app, for example, that's the time you should be advertising. People might think, why? Be on Twitter, social media. No, there are people pouring out their hearts on shows. I remember Rhythm, I think it was Rhythm FM and Shola Thompson. I can't remember, but I remember if I'm calling that name. And they will come on, and the ladies will call, and men will call and say the most stupid thing. The way I saw it, but they're calling back to back, meaning that they're constantly on air, and there was a wide listenership as well. So, in mastering what you're doing, it's those little things. It's finding out if you're in an agency, you're walking on the street, you're asking random questions. What do you listen to? Why? What do you watch? And you'll be surprised. Because, we assume a lot, that people, at some point in my life, when I still was actively subscribing to cable TV, my best station was African Magic Yoruba. And people were always struck by it because they assumed that I was CNN kind of person.
Yeah.
Yes, and, I'm very blah, blah, blah. But I was African Magic Yoruba. And why? It made me laugh. Sometimes the stupidity of what I'm seeing just made me laugh. And how I watch a part one of a movie, I can tell where it's going, or perhaps it goes into a funny direction. I laugh at the stupidity of the whole thing, but I still watch part two. And so, but if you see me typically and you're advertising to me, you'd assume that you catch me on CNN or something else. So sometimes it's important to ask people, and once you ask what are you watching or what are you listening to, then you ask them why. And when they give you these explanations, then you understand. The software I was talking about had Radio Lagos at some point really, really high. And then And they had it for even for people who were in the B class sort of
Okay.
people and stuff like that. And if you wonder why would the A, or B class be listening to Radio Lagos and Co. But the thing is, just like I mentioned, sometimes the drivers are on these things. You enter the car, you're being driven to the airport early in the morning. The driver is listening to you because maybe he's Yoruba or is inclined towards the station and Co. And when he's on it, perhaps either you're in the good old days, you're reading the newspaper, or now you're on your phone. You can't be bothered about what is playing, or if you're Yoruba as well, you're listening. You're like, okay, this is not bad. This is funny and Co. You leave it there. You just find out what people are listening to, what people are watching and stuff. Bottom line is you to master your art. Whatever it is that you're doing, you need to understand it better. Understand in such a way that you understand it more than those that you're servicing. So the client needs to come to you for advice and not the other way around. I find myself in situations now that I know more than my agency. And I think that's absurd. Then, because why do I have one? It's only Nigeria. Maybe not only Nigeria, but the Nigerian space is simple. Sometimes the client is a master. We have a master-servant relationship with agencies and clients. In other climes, even in Africa, in South Africa, for example, and other climes, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's a partnership where people understand that we're partners in this. And the clients typically often comes down to the agency for advice and listens. Here we seem to sometimes say we know it all and Co. But that's only also possible because you understand that the agency knows this more than you do. Because you're paying an agency to consult for you. Because under the assumption that they know about this thing. If you believe that you did know about it more than them, then why do you have an agency? Why are you hiring? Why are you paying someone to consult for you? So, and that can only work. The respect you're alluding to can only work where, you understand what it is that you're doing. You understand what it is that your client is doing. You anticipate what the client requires even before they know that they need it. That way, you're indispensable. I used to have a client who, if I was in the room, even though I led a team of very, very dedicated and fantastic professionals, would think and say, look, I need you here because the insights that you give is always totally different. You understand this thing. And that client was one I respected a lot as well because she was just crazy. She knew her stuff. But then she would say, look, come in. I need to hear your own opinion on this. I had a boss a couple of years ago, fantastic boss, who, if we had meetings, Tokumbo. So, if we had meetings and I did not speak in those meetings, he would be worried. And even though it wasn't my forte at that time, he would call me after the meeting. You didn't say anything. I'm worried. You always say stuff. You always have an opinion, good or bad. If you're not saying anything, then I'm worried. Something is wrong. What is it? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe perhaps in that meeting I didn't want to say what my opinion was for, just being a little bit circumspect and all that, and I'll give it to him. People must listen to you not because you have a loud voice, not because you have 20 odd years, because you know what it is that you're saying. And when they listen to you, they know that you're giving them knowledge. That can only happen when you yourself take time out to understand other things and not, you master your own craft. But then if you're consulting, if you're an agency and Co, the sphere that your client is in, you need to understand it. You need to anticipate. If you do that, you'll be indispensable. I use social media in a different way. I use it for gathering news and intelligence. I know about things that are odd because I just believe that I need to know a little bit of nearly everything. So I can hold very, very intelligent conversations about the most funniest things. And even things that are maybe now at my age or what have you, I'm on the streets as it is. I know what's going on. And people are surprised when I if whatever is not necessarily trending, but whatever it says that is in town, in vogue, is happening, news, even when it's odd or silly, I'm aware. Because I gather news, I try to understand what's going on and things that are not specifically because at the end of the day, if we're into advertising, if we're into communication, I can only communicate when I know what it is that people are tending towards. If I shut myself out and say, it's because I hear phrases, I hear lingo that I'm like, what does this even mean? Doesn't make any sense, right? But then I know what's up. I know what it is. I know how the context is being used in. I know things that are happening. I might not necessarily participate in them, but I know because it is my job to know how to communicate. If you do not even know what piano is, beyond you just knowing some lists of some songs, or you don't know what alter is to some people, how are you going to communicate to those set of people when you have a product that is trying to sell to that market? So I think that you need to master your art, what it is that you claim you have knowledge in, and then go a step further by understanding your clients, their needs, their industry, their sector, and then anticipating what it is that they require. Because once you do that, you're the master of the game.
Beautiful. I love that. I love the explanations and the analogies you gave. I feel like you took that straight part out of my mouth, because I feel like in the marketing and communication space, you need to be present. You need to be self-aware. You need to be conscious of your environment, because that's the only way you can actually resonate, with the people you're looking to reach or engage. How have you been able to manage, or blend, that street smartness, or I won't say street life, but like street smartness, but also still ensure that in the corporate world, there's balance, there's synergy, just to ensure that when birthing any idea, it can resonate with, the intended target audience?
Fantastic. I think it's a little bit challenging, to be honest, because how you strict and still corporate savvy at the same time. It's a little bit challenging. I think the first thing is just having your ear to the ground. Realistically, as much as possible. Also being on ground. Because as you get older, certain things would no longer appeal to you, certain lifestyles will not appeal to you. I reckon that the things that I did in my youth, my parents would see it as odd and say, what's this new thing that they're doing now? The things that we've taken as fashion now, for example, are things that in some climate, in some times past, people will know what's going on, and all that. So I think that you have to have your ears to the ground. You have to be on the ground. You have to know what's going on. You just have to find a balance. It's like how you want to go home to sleep, but you also have to be in town to see what's going on. I spend a lot of time on X. It's probably my favorite social media site, because it's a little bit, sometimes, not necessarily all the time, a little bit intellectual. It can be true. Sometimes it can be mundane as well. However, it gives me a feel of what's going on. Things that are not necessarily trending per se, but maybe feel of what's going on. You can see where discourse is in town. Generally, you can have a feel of where people are tilting towards, politically, economically, socially, and all. Following what's going on, even if you have no real belief in it. So so I follow. It's like, for example, I have, of all the years that Big Brother has been happening in the country, maybe I've seen cumulatively in all the years, I don't even know what, I think it's season 10 or whatever it is, doesn't even matter. I don't think cumulatively I've seen more than 30 minutes of the entire show. And in my previous life, I would always recommend that we did Big Brother. We sponsored the whatever. Even though I didn't watch it, I thought it was the most frivolous thing. I think reality shows are funny to me because I don't see how people sit and watch their lives. I can't comprehend. You can watch mine, but I don't know how I want to sit and watch other people live their lives, and for me it's a waste of time. There's just so much, and the way people are. But I get it because I'm trying to communicate, I'm trying to advertise. If that's what people are watching, the reasons why they're watching might be mundane to me, but if that's what they're watching, then that's where I need to be at. And so I would recommend it every single year because I knew that. But then there's also school of thought who just wouldn't say what's Big Brother, what's happening there, what are they doing there. and blah, blah, blah. I worked on a presidential campaign some years ago. I consulted on it in my private capacity. And we were on Big Brother. And I got a call from a partner in the project. Like, oh, that, from the top that they were saying, oh, why are they on Big Brother? What kind of show is that? And all that. I said, oh, wow, okay. But they saw the ad on Big Brother. I said, yes. I said, well, then the job has been done. You don't have to like it. It's funny how on Big Brother, shower hour, whenever they did it, was one of the most highly watched. And people go, oh God, they're there, they're fornicating, they're sinning. But people are watching. So, my point is, but with Big Brother, I use an analogy. I knew who the contestants were. I knew the ones that were really, people were talking about, the ones that people were raving about. I didn't know their faces. I knew their names because I didn't watch, but I knew what was going on. My point is that you need to have, to be on the ground and have your streets, your ears to the ground as well, to understand what's going on, and that's how you balance it. You need to be savvy enough to know what is going on around me, even if it's not how you would live your life. But in communications and advertising, in marketing, you need to know what do the streets want, and it's only when you know what the streets want they're able to give it to them. Being in your office, being in front of the computer, looking at graphs and indices and co will not get you anywhere. You need to be out there, not necessarily physically, but know what is going on. And once you have your ear to the ground, you know what's going on. You will thrive, because you know what people want. Because if you sit in an office and have people consult for you and do all that, and sometimes also don't forget that our personal bias is always coming into play.
Sure.
People will say that it's like how people advertise, but they're advertising for Lagos only half the time. We're advertising, you live in Lekki, you're selling a mass product, but you say that you're not seeing your billboards on Lekki FA Expressway. In fact, not Lekki Expressway, you don't want to go beyond phase 1. You're not going to Aja. You're not going to Epe. You're not going to Alimosho. You don't even know where Agege Motor Road is. You don't know where Songwater is. But you're selling a mass product. But you're the brand manager or the marketing director. But you live in Lekki 1. You want to see your billboards on Lekki 1. But you leave the clusters where your real people are. It's like some of the commercials that we see on CNN.
True.
Commercials that should be on local TV, but they're on CNN, being watched by the directors, of the companies, or the chairmen of the company.
Yes, stakeholder management.
Exactly. So that's it.
I love that, right? I love that because, in all honesty, I think it's a very big challenge. What you just said now, you find cases where brand managers, brand owners, want to dictate, where and what platform you should use, and sometimes, even most times, they tend to forget the target audience.
Yes.
They forget that they are not the target audience, and they want to ensure that they have their way in terms of where they want the campaigns to be deployed or how it's even deployed.
Yeah.
From your years of experience and learnings from various campaigns that you've worked on, what would you say is the best, or what would you say is the right way to approach it, best practice wise, in line with what you've seen has worked? Do you think that brand managers, and I think you've alluded to it, brand managers that want their campaigns XYZ place, are doing the right thing? If they are not, what should they be doing?
Well, I think that, to be honest, the first question is the most relevant one for any campaign, and that's how I like to view it first and foremost. Who is my target audience? Once you answer that question without any bias, the answer pretty much comes up by itself. Because once you understand that you are not your own target audience, I understand stakeholder management to that extent. You can't work in a corporate world and not do a bit of that, because sometimes the function of I'm not hearing it, I'm not seeing it, and where you're not going to tell your director to go and listen on Radio Lagos. He's not a show essential. So I understand that to some extent, but there has to be a balance, and as a brand manager, as a product owner or product manager, as the agency, whatever, you need to always, first of all, because if you remember that who is this for, even as a person, even if you're the stakeholder, once you understand that underlying principle, you would be less. So when they explain to you and say, these are the people we're targeting, this is where we find them, you're going to be more receptive to hearing that. Always, and there's no way. What happens typically is that, and the big brands who spend a lot of money, who have a lot of money to throw away, or the brands that are basically like oxygen and people don't have a choice, might get away with it because there's no choice. People just must consume you because for whatever it is that you're selling. But for brands that are smaller, who have limited budget, the moment you do not advertise to the right set of people, you would always have challenges. The best way is, how do you infuse culturally relevant, and relevant themes and insights that you've garnered into the campaign to speak to the right set of people? Like I said previously, you cannot advertise a mass market products for people who are D class or C or lower C class, and then be in places where they're totally absent. How are you as a brand manager not able to understand? I mean, you don't even know that Limonshore has the highest amount of people in Lagos State, for example, or that axis that seems all mad and cool is where people are actually consuming your products. You understand that, yes, because your sales figures tell you that, but then your advertising is in Ikoyi, on a billboard in Ikoyi, because you like to see yourself. And not even all brands need to be on boards in reality. Sometimes it could be guerrilla marketing that you need to do. Sometimes it could be low-end marketing that you need to do. There are brands that thrive because they understand that they need to be in the markets, advertising in the markets or selling in the markets. There are brands who understand that they do not need cable television. You have instances where, for example, cable TV as a model of what it is losing subscribers, not just here, all over the world in reality. There's an upside in, obviously, there's so many streaming platforms in reality now, and there's an upside in, people deciding on content that they want to consume on demand as compared with the one that are being served, right? And then even if you localize and bring you home here, there's, in the last couple of years, some of the leading providers or the leading provider of cable services in the country have been losing subscribers massively. Because you at home, you know that you stop subscribing to X. You now use, Y.
True.
You are aware. As just, I think this week, Monday, there were numbers from the leading cable company saying they lost a lot of subscribers, mostly from Nigeria and co. But watch the advertising spend and budgets of companies. You realize that a lot of them still have 70 to 80% of the advertising spend on this, cable companies that are already losing subscribers. Why? Because if you're commonsensical about it, you realize that you cannot be advertising on a platform that is losing subscribers, because that's what you watch. You get what I mean? People don't even understand the power of, they say, NTA. Do people still watch? And you cannot be in Abuja, you cannot be in government, you cannot be in politics and not watch NTA. Do you know how many ministers have been released of their jobs and they only learn while watching 9 o'clock news?
True.
And for some places, people don't understand also that outside of Lagos, outside of the major capitals, Lagos or Abuja or Kano, Kaduna, Port Harcourt, the major cities and co. It's like when we're growing up, what you have on TV is what you can consume. It's whatever it is that is showing. So when I was growing up, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, several other programs that were 10, 15, 20 years old were the things that we're consuming, and we're lapping it up because that's the only thing that we had on television. It's the same till now outside of the major cities. Whatever it is that in villages and co, where they are gathering to watch TV, they're gathering to at viewing centers. People think because of Lagos, in Lagos they have viewing centers showing you football. Outside of Lagos and in less urban places, they have viewing centers showing programs, because that's the only way. That's the only TV in the neighborhood or community. people can go and watch. So people pay to go and watch programs, not just football. Whatever it is that is showing on the TV that they can get in those places is what they're going to consume. So if you're selling X, you're better served using advertising on the local programs in those areas than on cable, that in any case is losing subscribers. So there must be discipline and understanding without the bias of I'm not seeing myself. That sometimes there's that tendency to want to see yourself. If you have a campaign, see yourself on cable television, you feel fulfilled that you've done something wrong.
True.
By the way.
True. Super apps. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we let you go, for a young, marketing enthusiast, in their maybe early 30s, late 20s, looking to grow in that career of their choice, in this case, marketing and communications, what would be your advice, recommendations to that person, just to ensure that they become, as successful as you have become, in the past, 2 decades?
Do not close your mind. You have to be open-minded. You have to be open-minded. You have to learn. Open your mind to your environment. Advertising, communication is all in the environment. If you drive, if you commute, if you look around you, you pick up things that are important for you to communicate to other people with. You have to be open-minded. You have to be able to learn. And learning isn't just and I don't mean academic learning. I mean learning, the most mundane things, the funny things, There's so many aspects of this, of advertising that we're not even deploying yet. For example, look at the advent of podcasting. How do you as a brand integrate into that? As a means of advertising. Look at the advent of skit making and how huge it is. How do you as a brand or magazine comms dude, how do you integrate into that? How do you use that as a form of getting to your audience? We still haven't even scratched the surface. We consume skits now as a form of entertainment. We haven't started using it as a form of communication as much as we can. Of course, there are a few influencers, as we like to call them, and co, but we're still not, utilizing as much as we can. How can you? So look around you. Don't be open-minded. Find a mentor. It's important that you find the right kind of mentor, because the industry as well is now there's a get-rich-quick syndrome that's happening. I mean, we might not want to talk about it, but it is there. And for obviously, not just in the industry, but across the country, nobody wants to do the work. In your 30s, you want to buy your own house, buy your own car, nice car. We know, live the life and co. But you need to stay grounded. You need to stop chasing the percentages and stay focused. The funny thing is that once you do the right things, you put in the work, you master your craft, all those things will come to you. You would find out that you start consulting for people and start earning legitimate money because you know your craft. And everybody needs advertising. Whether you're a small business owner, whether you're a big business owner, whether you're into politics, whether you're into business, there's a market for everybody to sell eventually.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dayo, for your
you.
time. It's been so
It's super pleasure.
Yeah, we learned so much from you. Thank you so much again for sharing with us. If you're out there, not sure of the next step to take in life, or you're challenged, you shared so much, pointers, gems with you. Stay curious, remain hardworking, be a professional. Yes, indeed, there's a get-rich-quick syndrome there, but stay level-headed, stay grounded, and if you remain dedicated on that course, eventually you would find that you would be fine. And we want to say a very big thank you again.
Thank you for having me as well.
For your time. And from all of us here at Stories and Journeys, it is bye-bye for now.